My daughter broke into my bedroom safe at 2 a.m., expecting to find $500,000 in diamonds. Instead, she found something that made her call me, screaming in rage. I smiled, hung up the phone, and finally slept peacefully for the first time in months. Before we start, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. My name is Margaret Elizabeth Chen, but everyone just calls me Maggie. I'm 68 years old, and if you saw me at the grocery store or tending my roses on a Sunday morning, you'd probably think I'm just another sweet retired grandmother living out her golden years in peace. You'd see the silver hair I've stopped dyeing, the reading glasses hanging from a chain around my neck, and the gentle smile I give to strangers. You might even think my life has been easy, comfortable, simple, but you'd be wrong. I've lived through more heartbreak and hardship than most people could imagine, and I survived it all with grace. Or at least I tried to. I'm a widow. I've been alone for 33 years, ever since my husband Richard died of a sudden heart attack at the age of 42. One moment he was laughing at the dinner table with our 3 kids, and the next moment he was gone, just like that. No warning, no goodbye. I was 35 years old with a 12-year-old daughter, a 9-year-old son, and a 6-year-old baby boy. I had $8,000 in savings and a mortgage I didn't know how to pay. But I didn't fall apart. I couldn't. My children needed me. So I became both mother and father. I worked 2 jobs for 15 years straight. During the day, I was a school librarian, helping kids discover the magic of books and earning just enough to cover the basics. At night, after tucking my babies into bed, I'd drive across town to clean office buildings until 2 a.m. I scrubbed toilets. I mopped floors. I emptied trash bins in corporate buildings where executives made more in a day than I made in a month. My back ached. My hands became rough and cracked. But I never complained, not once, because every dollar I earned went toward giving my children the life their father would have wanted for them. I paid for Sarah's private school tuition when she struggled in public school. I saved for years to give her the fairy tale wedding she dreamed about since she was a little girl. I helped Michael with his down payment on his first house when he got married. I supported David through college when he couldn't decide on a major and kept changing his mind. I wore the same winter coat for 15 years. I cut my own hair. I bought groceries from discount stores and learned to make meals stretch across 3 days. I gave up vacations, new clothes, nights out with friends, and even the simple pleasure of a monthly manicure. I gave them everything. Not because I expected something in return, but because that's what mothers do. We sacrifice. We endure. We love without conditions or contracts. I raised good kids, or at least I thought I did. I taught them about honesty, integrity, kindness, and respect. I told them that family is everything, that blood is thicker than water, and that we take care of each other no matter what. I believed in those values with every fiber of my being. I built my entire life around them, and I truly believed my children felt the same way. I was so very, very wrong. At 68 years old, I had finally arrived at a place I never thought I'd reach. Peace. Real, genuine peace. The kind that settles into your bones after decades of struggle and sacrifice. My mortgage was paid off 3 years earlier, and for the first time in my adult life, I didn't lie awake at night worrying about money. I didn't have much, but what I had was mine. Earned through sweat, tears, and an unshakable determination to provide for my family. My little 2-story colonial house sat on a quiet street lined with oak trees that turned brilliant shades of gold and crimson every fall. The neighborhood was safe, friendly, and filled with families who'd known me for decades. My garden was my pride and joy. I spent hours every week tending to my roses, hydrangeas, and the vegetable patch where I grew tomatoes, cucumbers, and bell peppers. There's something deeply satisfying about putting your hands in the soil and watching life grow. It reminded me that beautiful things can flourish even after the harshest winters. My daily routine was simple and comforting. I'd wake up at 7, make myself a cup of Earl Grey tea, and sit on my back porch watching the sunrise. Then I'd spend a few hours reading. I've always loved books. They were my escape during the hardest years, and now they were my companions in retirement. Mystery novels were my favorite, the kind where clever detectives solved impossible crimes through careful observation and intelligence. I volunteered at the local library 3 days a week, helping children discover the magic of reading just like I'd done during my working years. Those kids brought me so much joy. Their excitement over a new book, their questions about characters and stories, their innocent wonder at the world reminded me why I'd worked so hard all those years. But the highlight of my week was always Sunday dinner. Every single Sunday, without fail, my children would come home. Sarah would arrive first, usually around 3 o'clock, carrying a bottle of wine and wearing one of her expensive designer dresses. She'd hug me and compliment my cooking before it even came out of the oven. My son Michael would show up with his wife Jennifer and their 2 children, my precious grandchildren Emma and Lucas. The kids would burst through the door with shouts of "Grandma" and nearly knock me over with their hugs. David, my youngest, would arrive last, usually with some funny story about his week working at the marketing firm downtown. The house would fill with noise and laughter and life. Emma and Lucas would run through the hallways playing hide and seek while I finished, preparing the pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans, and homemade rolls. The dining room table, the same one Richard and I had bought 40 years ago, would be crowded with plates, glasses, and serving dishes. We'd hold hands and say grace, something Richard had always insisted on, and I'd feel his presence in those moments, like he was still with us somehow, watching over the family he'd started. After dinner, we'd have dessert, usually my famous apple pie with vanilla ice cream. The adults would linger at the table, talking and laughing while the kids played in the living room. Sometimes we'd watch old family videos and everyone would tease each other about outdated hairstyles and fashion choices. These were the moments I lived for. These Sunday gatherings were proof that all my sacrifice had been worth it. I had raised a close, loving family. We were together. We were happy. Or so I believed. Looking back now, I wonder how many of those smiles were real, how many of those hugs were genuine. How long had Sarah been calculating my worth instead of cherishing my presence? I was so blind, so trusting, so foolish. It started on a Tuesday evening in late September. The air had that crisp autumn feel, and I'd spent the afternoon raking leaves in the front yard. I was in the kitchen making myself a simple dinner of soup and toast when I heard the front door open. I wasn't expecting anyone. "Mom, it's me." Sarah's voice echoed through the hallway. I smiled, wiping my hands on a dish towel as I walked to greet her. She stood in the entryway holding a small bag from the bakery downtown. "Sweetheart, what a lovely surprise. I wasn't expecting you today." She hugged me, but something felt off. The embrace was brief, almost perfunctory. Her eyes seemed distracted, already scanning past me toward the staircase that led to the second floor. "I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by. I brought you those lemon scones you love." We sat at the kitchen table, and I made us both tea. But the conversation felt strange, stilted. Sarah kept checking her phone, and her gaze kept wandering. She'd look at me, then past me, then toward the doorway, as if she was waiting for something, or searching for something. "Mom, how are you feeling? I mean, really feeling? Are you managing okay here by yourself?" The question seemed innocent enough, but there was an edge to it, a probing quality that made me pause. "I'm fine, honey. Why do you ask?" She shrugged, stirring her tea with unnecessary focus. "I just worry about you. This house is so big. All these stairs. What if you fell and no one was here to help you?" "I've lived here for 40 years, Sarah. I think I can manage a staircase." I tried to keep my tone light, but I felt a small knot forming in my stomach. She nodded but didn't smile. Then she asked the question that would replay in my mind for weeks. "Mom, have you ever thought about downsizing? Moving into something smaller, maybe a nice community where you'd have people around? You know, for safety and companionship?" I laughed, trying to brush off the suggestion. Downsize? Sarah, I love this house. Your father and I chose every paint color together. We planted that oak tree in the backyard when you were born. This house is filled with memories. Why would I ever leave? She nodded slowly, but her expression was unreadable. Just thinking ahead, that's all. Then came the question that sent a chill down my spine. What about Dad's jewelry collection? You still keep all that here, right? In your bedroom? Don't you worry about keeping something so valuable in the house? I mean, what if someone broke in? My hand froze halfway to my teacup. Why was she asking about the jewelry? We rarely talked about it. I kept Richard's collection in the safe, and my children knew it was there. But it was never a topic of conversation. It was simply understood that it was part of their father's legacy, something to be passed down eventually. It's perfectly safe, Sarah. It's in a locked safe that only I can access. There's nothing to worry about. She nodded, but her eyes held something I couldn't quite identify. Curiosity. Calculation. I couldn't tell. She left 20 minutes later, giving me another quick hug and reminding me to think about what she'd said. I stood at the door watching her car disappear down the street, and that knot in my stomach tightened. Something felt wrong, but I told myself I was being paranoid. She's just concerned about me, I reasoned. She's my daughter. She loves me. Still, after she left, I found myself climbing the stairs to my bedroom and standing in front of the closet. I opened it and stared at the safe, its black metal surface reflecting the afternoon light. I spun the dial just to make sure it was secure. It was locked. Everything was fine, but the unease lingered like a shadow I couldn't shake. Over the next 2 weeks, Sarah's visits became more frequent. She'd drop by unannounced, always with some small gift or excuse. A container of homemade cookies, a magazine article about senior wellness she thought I'd find interesting, a brochure for a local community center that offered activities for retirees. Each visit followed the same pattern. We'd sit and chat, but her attention always seemed divided. Her eyes would drift toward the staircase. She'd ask casual questions about my health, my daily routine, whether I'd had any trouble with the house, and inevitably she'd circle back to the same suggestions. Mom, have you given any more thought to what we talked about? About finding a place with more support? I'd smile and change the subject, but inside, that knot of unease kept growing. One afternoon, she brought Tom with her. My son-in-law had always been pleasant enough, though I'd never felt particularly close to him. He was a stockbroker, always dressed in expensive suits and talking about investments and market trends in ways I didn't fully understand. They sat in my living room, and Tom started talking about real estate values in the neighborhood. Margaret, do you know what homes on this street are selling for now? Your property has appreciated significantly. You're sitting on quite an asset here. I nodded politely, unsure where this was going. Sarah jumped in. That's what I've been trying to tell her, Tom. Mom could sell this place, move somewhere more manageable, and have plenty of money left over to enjoy her retirement. Travel, hobbies, whatever she wants. I felt my defenses rising. I don't want to sell my home, and I am enjoying my retirement right here. They exchanged a glance. A quick, almost imperceptible look that spoke volumes, but I pushed it away. I told myself they were just being practical, maybe even caring in their own misguided way. After they left, I sat in Richard's old armchair and tried to make sense of my feelings. Was I being ungrateful? Sarah was my daughter. She'd always been the responsible one, the planner, the one who thought ahead. Maybe she really was just worried about me getting older. Maybe I was reading malice into simple concern. I thought about all the times she'd been there for me over the years, how she'd organized Richard's funeral when I was too devastated to function, how she'd helped me navigate the mortgage paperwork after he died, how she'd been my rock during the hardest period of my life. That's the daughter I knew, the one I'd raised, not someone who would have ulterior motives. I convinced myself I was being paranoid, overly sensitive, maybe even a little lonely, imagining problems where none existed. The questions about the jewelry, she was probably just concerned about security, like she'd said. The suggestions about moving? She probably genuinely thought it would be better for me. I was her mother. I'd sacrificed everything for her. She wouldn't betray me, that's not how family works. So I did what I'd always done. I gave her the benefit of the doubt. I chose to believe in the goodness of my child rather than trust my instincts. I told myself that the uncomfortable feeling in my gut was just my imagination running wild, probably influenced by too many mystery novels. I even felt guilty for doubting her. What kind of mother suspects her own daughter of having bad intentions? I'd raised her better than that. I knew her better than that. Or at least I thought I did. I decided to let it go, to stop overthinking every conversation and analyzing every glance. Sarah was just being Sarah. Practical, forward-thinking, maybe a bit pushy, but ultimately well-meaning. I wouldn't let suspicion poison our relationship. I wouldn't become one of those bitter old women who saw conspiracy in every kindness. So I pushed my doubts deep down and tried to forget them. I went back to my routine, my garden, my books, my Sunday dinners. But doubt, once planted, is hard to uproot completely. It grows in the dark corners of your mind, waiting for the right moment to break through the surface. The moment that shattered my denial came on a Thursday afternoon in early October. I'd been volunteering at the library that morning, helping organize the children's section for their upcoming Halloween reading event. The head librarian, Carol, wasn't feeling well and sent everyone home early around 1 o'clock. I didn't mind. I'd planned to make a nice soup for dinner and maybe start a new mystery novel I'd been saving. I pulled into my driveway at 1:30 p.m. and noticed Sarah's silver BMW parked on the street. My heart lifted for a moment. Maybe she'd stop by for a surprise visit. But then I wondered why she hadn't parked in the driveway like she usually did. I walked through the front door calling out, "Sarah? Honey, are you here?" No answer. The house was quiet, but I heard something. A faint sound coming from upstairs. Footsteps. I set my purse down on the hall table and started climbing the stairs, assuming she was in the bathroom or perhaps waiting for me in one of the bedrooms. As I reached the top of the landing, I heard her voice. She was in my bedroom. The door was halfway open, and I could see her shadow moving near my closet. I was about to call out to her again when I heard her speak. She was on the phone, her voice low but clear. "I'm telling you, Tom, it's all here. The jewelry is worth at least $500,000. I looked up the appraisal Dad had done years ago. She's kept it all." I froze. My hand gripped the stair railing so hard my knuckles turned white. Sarah continued, her tone businesslike and cold. "Once we get her into a home, we can access everything. The jewelry, the house, whatever she has in savings. We sell the house, liquidate the assets, and we're set. We can finally pay off the credit cards and get back on our feet." My heart was pounding so loud I was sure she could hear it. I pressed myself against the hallway wall, barely breathing. I know," she said, responding to whatever Tom was saying on the other end. "But Mom's not going to live forever. She's 68, and honestly, she's getting more forgetful. It won't be hard to convince her she needs more help. A few more comments about the house being too much for her, maybe mention some safety concerns, and she'll start thinking it's her own idea." A pause. Then she laughed. Actually laughed. "No, she has no clue. She trusts me completely. She's always been naive like that. Remember when I told you she worked 2 jobs and gave us everything? She's a giver, Tom. She doesn't know how to protect herself from people who know how to take." The words hit me like physical blows. Each sentence was a knife twisting deeper into my chest. This wasn't concern, this wasn't love. This was calculation, greed, betrayal. "Look, I have to go," Sarah said. "I'm going to try the safe combination again. She probably used Dad's birthday or their anniversary. I'll figure it out." Panic shot through me. I couldn't let her know I was here, not yet. I needed time to think, to process, to figure out what to do. I backed down the stairs as quietly as I could, my legs trembling beneath me. I grabbed my purse, slipped back out the front door, and got into my car. I sat there in my driveway staring at my own house, feeling like a stranger in my own life. My daughter, my firstborn, the baby I'd held in my arms 45 years ago and promised to love and protect forever. She was planning to rob me, to manipulate me, to warehouse me in some facility so she could strip away everything I'd worked for. Tears streamed down my face, but I didn't make a sound. I couldn't, because somewhere deep inside, beneath the shock and heartbreak, something else was stirring. Anger. I couldn't go back inside. Not yet. Not while she was still in there, prowling through my bedroom, trying to crack open my safe like a common thief. I started the car and drove aimlessly through the neighborhood, my vision blurred with tears, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. I ended up at a small coffee shop 3 miles away, a place I'd never been before. I ordered tea I didn't want and sat in a corner booth, staring at nothing. The words kept replaying in my mind like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. She's not going to live forever. She's always been naive like that. She doesn't know how to protect herself from people who know how to take. Is that really how my daughter saw me? As a fool? As an obstacle to her financial recovery? As something to be managed and disposed of when convenient? I sat in that coffee shop for 3 hours watching the afternoon fade into evening. Families came and went. Couples laughed over lattes. Teenagers did homework. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that my entire world had just collapsed. When I finally returned home, Sarah's car was gone. I walked through my house like it was a crime scene, seeing everything differently now. I went straight to my bedroom. The closet door was open. The safe was closed, but I could see faint scratches around the dial where she'd been trying different combinations. She'd been in here, touching my things, plotting against me. I sank onto my bed and let the full weight of the betrayal crash over me. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't me being overly sensitive. This was real, calculated, intentional. I needed to talk to someone I could trust. I pulled out my phone and called Michael, my middle child. He'd always been the level-headed one, the peacemaker, the one who saw situations clearly without drama. "Mom, everything okay?" Just hearing his voice made me start crying again. "Michael, I need to tell you something. Can you come over, or can I come to you? I can't talk about this on the phone." 30 minutes later, I was sitting in Michael's kitchen while his wife Jennifer made us coffee. I told him everything. The strange visits, the questions about the house and jewelry, the conversation I'd overheard, every devastating word. Michael's face grew darker with each sentence. When I finished, he sat back in his chair and ran his hands through his hair. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I wish I could say I'm surprised, but I'm not." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" He exchanged a glance with Jennifer, then sighed heavily. "Sarah and Tom are in serious financial trouble. Have been for over a year. They made some bad investments, tried to flip houses during the market downturn, and lost almost everything. They're drowning in debt." "Why didn't anyone tell me?" "Sarah made us promise not to. She said she didn't want to worry you. But last month she called me asking to borrow $50,000. When I said no, she got angry. She said I didn't understand what it was like to struggle, that you'd given me more help over the years than you'd given her." I felt sick. That's not true. I gave equally to all of you. "I know, Mom, but Sarah's rewritten history in her mind. She's convinced herself that she's entitled to more because she's the oldest, or because she had a bigger wedding, or whatever justification helps her sleep at night." Jennifer leaned forward, her expression gentle but serious. "Margaret, people do terrible things when they're desperate. And right now, Sarah sees you as the solution to all her problems." The words hung in the air between us. My daughter didn't see me as her mother anymore. She saw me as money, as assets, as a problem to be solved. The betrayal was complete. Michael insisted I stay at his house that night. I couldn't bear the thought of going home, of sleeping in a house that no longer felt safe. Jennifer made up the guest room, and I lay awake until dawn, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing through decades of memories. trying to pinpoint when my daughter had stopped loving me and started seeing me as a bank account. The next morning, Michael sat down with me at breakfast with a serious expression. "Mom, I think you need to protect yourself legally, like right now. If Sarah is this desperate, she's not going to stop at just trying to steal the jewelry." "What do you mean?" "I mean, she might try to get power of attorney. She might try to have you declared incompetent. She might forge documents. I've seen it happen to other families, and it always starts the same way. Someone plants seeds about the elderly parent being forgetful, needing help, unable to manage their affairs." His words sent ice through my veins. I remembered Sarah's comments. She's getting more forgetful. She'd been laying groundwork, creating a narrative. That afternoon, I called my financial advisor, Robert, who'd managed my modest investments for the past 15 years. I asked him a simple question that made my blood run cold. "Robert, has anyone contacted you recently asking questions about my accounts?" There was a pause. A long, uncomfortable pause. "Margaret, I probably should have called you. About 3 weeks ago, Sarah came to see me. She said she was concerned about you, that you'd been having memory issues, and she wanted to know about your estate planning. She asked if you had a will, who the beneficiaries were, and whether you'd established any power of attorney." My hands clenched into fists. "What did you tell her?" "I told her I couldn't discuss your private financial matters without your permission. She seemed frustrated but said she understood. Then she asked me, hypothetically, what would happen to your assets if you became incapacitated and needed long-term care. And I told her that would depend entirely on your legal arrangements and the quality of care you needed. Margaret, I have to be honest, it felt like she was fishing for information. It made me uncomfortable." After I hung up, I sat in stunned silence. This wasn't just about stealing jewelry. Sarah had been systematically researching how to gain control of everything I owned. Michael suggested I talk to my lawyer. Frank Morrison had been Richard's closest friend and had handled our legal affairs for decades. He was semi-retired now, but agreed to meet me the next day. Frank listened to everything with the careful attention of someone who'd seen too many family betrayals over his 40-year career. When I finished, he pulled out a legal pad and started taking notes. "Margaret, this is more serious than you realize. If Sarah establishes a pattern of you being mentally incompetent, even if it's completely false, she could petition the court for guardianship. Once she has that, she could legally place you in a facility, sell your home, access your accounts, and liquidate your assets, all while claiming it's for your own good. But I'm perfectly competent. I know that. But the system is designed to protect vulnerable seniors, which unfortunately means it can be manipulated by unscrupulous family members. I've seen cases where adult children present a carefully constructed narrative to a judge. Instances of forgetfulness, unpaid bills, safety concerns, and the judge grants guardianship to protect the elderly parent. By the time the parent realizes what's happening, they've lost all legal rights. The room seemed to spin around me. "There's something else you should know," Frank continued. "I did some checking. Sarah visited 3 different assisted living facilities in the past month. She specifically asked about memory care units and what documentation would be needed for admission. She also inquired about costs and whether Medicaid would cover it if the patient's assets were depleted." My voice came out as a whisper. "She's been planning this for a while, hasn't she?" Frank nodded grimly. "This isn't impulsive, Margaret. This is calculated. She's been building a case, gathering information, and positioning herself to take control of your life." That night, I returned to my empty house. Michael had offered to let me stay longer, but I couldn't hide forever. This was my home, the home Richard and I had built together. I wouldn't let Sarah take that from me, even if just the thought of her made my chest tighten with pain. I walked through the rooms in the dark, not bothering to turn on lights. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. The walls that had once held warmth and laughter now felt like they were closing in on me. I ended up in the living room, surrounded by decades of memories frozen in frames. I picked up a photo from the mantel. Sarah at age 5, missing her 2 front teeth, grinning at the camera while clutching a stuffed rabbit. I remembered that day. We'd gone to the zoo, just the 2 of us, a special mother-daughter day. She'd held my hand the entire time, looked up at me with those big brown eyes and said, "Mommy, I love you more than all the animals in the whole world." The tears came then, not gentle tears, but deep, wrenching sobs that shook my entire body. I sank onto the couch, clutching that photograph, mourning not just for what I'd lost, but for what had never really existed. Had that little girl been real, or had I simply seen what I wanted to see? I pulled out the old photo albums, torturing myself with memories. Sarah's first day of kindergarten, hiding behind my legs, too scared to go inside until I promised I'd be waiting right there when school ended. Her high school graduation, when she'd given a speech thanking her mother for never giving up on the family. Her wedding day, when she'd cried as we danced together and whispered, "I wouldn't be here without you, Mom. You're my hero." Had she meant any of it? Or was I just a useful tool, someone to provide what she needed until she could take the rest? I thought about all those nights working until 2 a.m., my back screaming in pain, my hands raw from industrial cleaning chemicals. I thought about the dreams I'd abandoned. I'd wanted to be a teacher, maybe even get my master's degree in literature. But Richard's death had ended those dreams. I'd given them up without hesitation because my children needed me. I remembered the winter I wore the same threadbare coat for months because Sarah needed money for college textbooks. I remembered eating soup and crackers for dinner so I could afford Michael's baseball equipment. I remembered missing parent events because I was working, sacrificing time with them so they could have a future. And this was my reward. My daughter plotting to throw me away like garbage so she could pawn my dead husband's jewelry. "Richard," I whispered into the darkness, "what would you say if you could see this? What would you do?" I could almost hear his voice. Richard had been gentle with me, but he'd been no fool when it came to other people. He'd always said, "Maggie, your kindness is beautiful, but don't let people mistake it for weakness. There are those who will take everything you offer and still demand more." I'd laughed it off back then, but he'd been right. He'd always been right. I felt old, truly old for the first time in my life. Not the calendar kind of old, but the bone-deep exhaustion of someone who'd fought too many battles and lost the ones that mattered most. Part of me wanted to give up, to let Sarah have what she wanted, to stop fighting and just fade away. But then I looked around at my living room, at Richard's chair, at the bookshelf we'd built together, at the life we'd created, and I felt something shift inside me. Anger, pure, righteous, burning anger. No, not this time. Not without a fight. Sarah wanted a war? Fine. She'd get one. But she'd forgotten one crucial thing. I'd survived worse than this. I'd buried my husband, raised 3 children alone, and rebuilt my life from nothing. I wasn't weak. I was a survivor. And I was done being a victim. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at Richard's old oak desk in the study, the same desk where he used to work on his jewelry appraisals and business accounts. I pulled out a fresh notebook and a pen, and I began to write. At the top of the page, I wrote, "Protection Plan." For the first time in days, my hands weren't shaking. For the first time since overhearing that devastating phone call, I felt clear-headed. The grief was still there, a constant ache in my chest, but it had transformed into something else, something sharper, something useful. Anger, I realized, could be fuel. I wrote down everything I knew: Sarah's financial troubles, her visits to assisted living facilities, her attempts to get information from my financial advisor, her questions about the jewelry, her comments about me being forgetful. Every piece fit together like a puzzle, revealing a picture of calculated manipulation. But I also wrote down my advantages. I was mentally sharp. I had documentation of everything I owned. I had witnesses: Michael, Jennifer, my financial advisor, my lawyer. And most importantly, I still had control. Sarah hadn't succeeded yet. She'd only made plans. Plans I was now going to destroy. At 7 a.m., I called Frank Morrison. "Frank, I need to see you today, this morning if possible." 2 hours later, I sat in his office with a list of demands. I wanted my will changed immediately. I wanted a living trust established that Sarah couldn't touch. I wanted explicit documentation of my mental competency. I wanted to revoke any possible future claims of power of attorney. And I wanted it all done quickly and legally, airtight. Frank nodded approvingly as he read through my list. "Margaret, I have to say this is exactly the right approach. You're taking control before she can make a move." "I'm not finished," I said, my voice steady and cold. "I want a new will that specifically excludes Sarah from any inheritance. She gets nothing. Not the house, not the jewelry, not a single dollar. Everything goes to Michael and David." Frank looked at me carefully. "Are you absolutely certain? This is permanent. I've never been more certain of anything in my life." We spent 3 hours going through paperwork. Frank had me take a cognitive assessment with a neuropsychologist colleague to document my mental competency. I passed every test with flying colors, and the doctor provided a written statement that I was of sound mind and fully capable of managing my own affairs. Next, I called a security company. By that afternoon, they were installing cameras throughout my house, including a hidden camera in my bedroom closet pointed directly at the safe. If Sarah came back to try the combination again, I'd have video evidence. Then I sat down and thought about the jewelry. That's what she wanted most. That's what she was fixated on. The $500,000 collection that represented my security and Richard's legacy. And that's when the idea came to me. A plan so perfectly fitting that I almost smiled. If Sarah wanted the jewelry so badly, if she was willing to betray her own mother for it, then the jewelry would be her downfall. I wouldn't just protect myself. I would teach her a lesson she'd never forget. I picked up the phone and called Michael. "I need your help with something. Can you take me across town tomorrow? I have some shopping to do." "What kind of shopping?" "The kind that's going to save my life and destroy your sister's plans." There was a pause. Then Michael's voice came back firm and supportive. "I'll pick you up at 9. I hung up and looked at my reflection in the window. The woman staring back at me looked different. Older, yes. Tired, certainly. But no longer weak. No longer a victim. Sarah had made a terrible mistake. She'd underestimated the woman who'd survived poverty, widowhood, and decades of sacrifice. She'd underestimated her mother, and she was about to learn exactly how much that mistake would cost her. Michael picked me up at exactly 9 o'clock the next morning. He didn't ask questions, just handed me a coffee and started driving when I gave him directions. We headed to a part of town I'd never been to before, an area with pawn shops, discount jewelers, and estate sale warehouses. "Mom, what are we doing here?" "Getting justice," I said simply. We walked into the first pawn shop, a cluttered store with dusty display cases and a bored clerk behind bulletproof glass. I spent an hour examining their costume jewelry collection. Cubic zirconia rings, fake diamond necklaces, imitation emerald bracelets. To an untrained eye, especially in dim light or through the lens of greed, they could easily pass for the real thing. I bought everything that resembled pieces from Richard's collection. By the time we left, I'd spent $600 on jewelry that looked expensive, but was worth practically nothing. We hit 2 more shops. By early afternoon, I had a collection of fake jewelry that, when arranged in velvet boxes similar to the ones Richard had used, looked remarkably convincing. Total cost, $823. Michael helped me carry the bags to the car. "I'm starting to understand," he said with a slight smile. "This is brilliant, Mom." I'm not done yet. Our next stop was a bank across town, one I'd never used before. I opened a safety deposit box under my name only, requiring 2 forms of identification and a password that only I knew. Then I went home, retrieved every single piece of Richard's real jewelry collection from my bedroom safe, and transferred it all to the new location. The genuine diamonds, the vintage emerald set, the sapphire bracelet Richard had given me on our 10th anniversary, the pearl necklace that had belonged to his grandmother, all of it worth over $500,000, was now completely out of Sarah's reach. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with a pen and stationery. I wrote the letter slowly, choosing each word carefully. This wasn't just a message, it was the final statement in a relationship that my daughter had destroyed. Dear Sarah, if you're reading this, it means you've broken into my safe. I poured my heartbreak onto the page, every word of disappointment, every ounce of betrayal. I reminded her of the sacrifices I'd made, the years I'd worked myself to exhaustion, the dreams I'd abandoned so she could have hers. I told her the jewelry was fake and that she'd never find the real pieces. I told her she was cut from my will. I told her she'd lost a mother. When I finished, my hands were shaking, but not from weakness, from resolution. I sealed the letter in an envelope and placed it carefully in the safe between the fake jewelry boxes, positioned so she'd see it immediately when she opened the velvet cases. Then I arranged the costume jewelry exactly as Richard's collection had been arranged, each piece in its designated box, each box stacked precisely. From a quick glance, it looked identical to what had been there before. Finally, I activated the hidden camera. The small device, no bigger than a button, was positioned perfectly to capture anyone who approached the safe. It fed directly to an app on my phone and stored footage in the cloud. The trap was set. Now all I had to do was wait for Sarah to spring it. I called Michael that night. It's done. Everything's in place. How do you feel? I thought about it. I feel like I've taken my power back. Good. That's exactly what you've done. Dad would be proud of you. Those words broke through my armor for just a moment, and I felt tears sting my eyes. But they weren't tears of sadness anymore. They were tears of strength. Sarah wanted to treat me like a senile old woman she could manipulate and discard. Instead, she was about to discover that her mother was sharper, smarter, and far more strategic than she'd ever imagined. The student was about to be taught a lesson by the teacher. The next 2 weeks were the longest of my life. Every day felt like an eternity as I waited for Sarah to make her move. But I couldn't show any sign that I knew what she was planning. I had to act normal, trusting, naive. I had to play the part she expected me to play. Sarah called 3 times during the first week, her voice dripping with false sweetness. She asked how I was feeling, whether I'd had any trouble remembering things, if I'd paid my bills on time. Each question was a small test, a tiny probe designed to build her narrative of an incompetent old woman. I'm fine, sweetheart, I'd say, keeping my voice light and unbothered. Everything's fine. On the 8th day, she showed up with more brochures, glossy pamphlets featuring smiling seniors in comfortable living rooms, playing cards and painting watercolors. Sunrise Senior Living Community, Golden Years, Residence, Meadowbrook Assisted Living. We sat at my kitchen table, and she spread them out like a salesperson closing a deal. Mom, I really think you should at least tour a few of these places, just to see what's available. You might actually love it. All these activities, people your own age, no more worrying about home maintenance. I looked at the brochures, letting my fingers trace the glossy images. Inside, I was screaming. Outside, I simply smiled. I suppose it wouldn't hurt to look. Her eyes lit up. Victory within reach. Really? Oh, Mom, I'm so glad you're being open-minded about this. I've actually already scheduled a tour for this Saturday at Meadowbrook. It's supposed to be beautiful. You scheduled it without asking me. A flash of irritation crossed her face before she recovered. I just wanted to be prepared in case you were interested. We can cancel if you want. I paused, letting her sweat for a moment. Then I nodded. No, Saturday is fine. She practically glowed. Perfect. I'll pick you up at 10. After she left, I checked my phone. The hidden camera was working perfectly. I scrolled through the footage from the past week. Sarah had come into my house twice when I wasn't home. I'd given her a key years ago for emergencies. Both times, she'd gone straight to my bedroom. Both times, She'd tried different combinations on the safe: birthdays, anniversaries, Richard's social security number. She was getting desperate, and desperate people make mistakes. On Thursday, Michael called with news. "Mom, I ran into Tom at the bank today. He looked terrible, stressed out. When I asked how he was doing, he practically snapped at me. Said something about running out of time and creditors breathing down our necks." How long do they have? Based on what I overheard, maybe a month before they start facing serious legal consequences. They're in deeper than I thought. That explained the urgency. Sarah wasn't just greedy. She was panicked. Friday evening, I had dinner with Michael and Jennifer. I told them everything was ready. The fake jewelry was in place. The camera was recording. The real collection was safely locked away where Sarah would never find it. My new will was signed and filed. "When do you think she'll make her move?" Jennifer asked. "Soon," I said. "Very soon. She's running out of time and options. She'll have to act." That night, I barely slept. Every sound made me check my phone. Every notification made my heart race. I knew it was coming. The question was when. Saturday morning arrived. I got dressed for the facility tour, playing my part perfectly. Sarah picked me up at 10, chattering nervously about the features of Meadowbrook, the pricing tiers, the level of care they provided. I let her talk. I nodded in the right places. I asked polite questions. And all the while, I was counting down, waiting. Because I knew that very soon Sarah would run out of patience. She'd make her move. And when she did, I'd be ready. The alert came at 2:17 a.m. on Sunday morning. I was at Michael's house, where I'd been staying since Saturday afternoon. We'd agreed it would be safer for me to be away when Sarah finally made her move. I was lying in the guest bed, wide awake despite the late hour, when my phone buzzed. "Motion detected in primary bedroom." My heart pounded as I opened the camera app. There, illuminated by a flashlight, was Sarah. She was dressed in dark clothes, moving quickly and quietly through my bedroom. She went straight to the closet. I sat up in bed, my phone gripped tightly in my hand, watching my daughter commit the ultimate betrayal in real time. She knelt in front of the safe and pulled out a piece of paper from her pocket. A list of combinations, probably every significant date she could think of. She tried one. Nothing. Another. Nothing. She was getting frustrated. I could see it in her body language. Then she tried Richard's birthday backwards. The safe clicked open. Her face transformed. Pure greed, pure triumph. She reached inside and pulled out the first velvet jewelry box, then another, and another. She opened one, and even from the camera angle, I could see her smile. She thought she'd won. Then she saw the envelope with her name on it. I watched as she set down the jewelry boxes and picked up the letter. She opened it, unfolding the pages slowly. I couldn't see her face clearly as she read, but I could see her body go rigid. Then she grabbed one of the jewelry boxes and opened it fully, holding a necklace up to the light. The moment of realization was beautiful. She grabbed another box, then another, examining each piece more closely. Her movements became frantic, desperate. She pulled out her phone and turned on its flashlight, inspecting a ring closely. That's when she understood. They were all fake. She grabbed her phone and I knew what was coming. 3 seconds later, my phone rang. Sarah's name flashed on the screen. I let it ring twice before answering. My voice was calm, steady. "Hello?" "You bitch!" Sarah's scream was so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. "These are fake. Where are the real ones? Where's the jewelry?" I kept my tone even, almost bored. "I have no idea what you're talking about, Sarah." "Don't play dumb with me. I'm in your house. I opened your safe. These diamonds are fake. All of it. It's all fake." "You broke into my house?" I let my voice carry just the right note of shock. "You broke into my safe?" There was a pause. In that moment, I knew she realized her mistake. She'd just confessed everything. "Mom, I can explain." "No need," I said, my voice turning ice cold. "I have it all on camera. You breaking into my home at 2 in the morning. You opening my safe. You stealing from me. Every second is recorded and backed up to the cloud. The police will be very interested in viewing this footage. You wouldn't dare, wouldn't I? You were planning to throw me in a nursing home and steal everything I own. You've been researching facilities. You've been trying to declare me incompetent. Did you really think I didn't know? Mom, please. The jewelry you're looking for? You'll never find it. It's somewhere safe, somewhere you'll never touch. And by the way, I changed my will. You're not in it. You get nothing. Not the house, not the jewelry, not a single dollar. You can't do this. I already did. You wanted to treat me like I was senile and helpless? Congratulations, Sarah. You just got outsmarted by your elderly, forgetful mother. She started to say something else, but I didn't want to hear it. I smiled for the first time in weeks, felt a weight lift from my shoulders, and said the most satisfying words I'd ever spoken. Goodbye, Sarah. Then I hung up. My phone rang 17 more times that night. I didn't answer. Sarah left voicemail after voicemail, her tone shifting from rage to desperation to bargaining to tears. I deleted each one without listening all the way through. I was done. Completely, utterly done. The next morning, I called a family meeting. I invited Michael and David along with their spouses. I did not invite Sarah, but I knew she'd find out about it. Small families have no secrets for long. We gathered in Michael's living room. I brought my laptop and pulled up the security camera footage. No one spoke as they watched Sarah break into my home at 2 a.m. No one moved as they saw her crack open the safe and realize the jewelry was fake. The recording included the audio from our phone call, every word she'd screamed, every confession she'd made. When it ended, David sat back, his face pale. Oh my God, Mom, I had no idea she was capable of this. Neither did I said quietly, but now we all know the truth. Jennifer, Michael's wife, spoke up. What are you going to do? Are you pressing charges? I thought about this carefully. No, she's still the mother of my grandchildren, and I won't put them through the trauma of seeing their mother arrested. But she's dead to me. She will not inherit anything. She is not welcome in my home. And if she ever tries to contact me, file for guardianship, or make any legal moves against me, I'll release this footage and press full charges for breaking and entering and attempted theft. Michael nodded slowly. That's more than fair, Mom. More than she deserves. Over the next few days, the family grapevine did its work. Sarah's actions became known, not through me, I told no one outside the family, but through her own panicked calls to relatives, trying to control the narrative. She claimed I was confused, that I'd misunderstood, that she was only trying to help. But Michael and David shared the truth with the extended family. Aunts, uncles, cousins. Everyone who mattered knew what Sarah had done. The social consequences were swift and brutal. Sarah and Tom were quietly uninvited from family gatherings. Old friends stopped returning their calls. The community that had once embraced them now viewed them with suspicion and disgust. Her reputation, built over 45 years, crumbled in a matter of days. 2 weeks later, I heard through Michael that Sarah and Tom had declared bankruptcy. Their creditors had finally caught up with them. They lost their house, their cars, everything. They moved into a small apartment across town, as far from me as they could get while still remaining in the same city. I felt no satisfaction in their suffering, only a deep, profound sadness for what could have been. But I also felt something else: relief, peace, freedom. I stayed in my home, the house Richard and I had built together. I continued my volunteer work at the library. I tended my garden, watching my roses bloom in brilliant reds and pinks. I had Sunday dinners with Michael and David and their families. My grandchildren still came to visit, still ran through my hallways laughing and playing. Life continued, but it was different now. Better, in some ways. I no longer carried the burden of Sarah's manipulation. I no longer questioned my own judgment or second-guessed my instincts. I'd learned a terrible lesson, but I'd learned it well. Not all family members deserve your trust. Not all children honor their parents. And sometimes, the people who claim to love you most are the ones capable of the deepest betrayal. But I'd also learned something more important. I was stronger than I'd ever imagined. At 68 years old, I'd fought back against manipulation and won. I'd protected myself when no one else could. I'd survived. And in surviving, I'd reclaimed my dignity. The jewelry remained in the safety deposit box, untouched. I never wore it. It wasn't about the money or the gems anymore. It was about the principle, about refusing to be a victim, about standing up and saying no. And that was worth more than all the diamonds in the world. I'm 68 years old now, and I've learned something that I wish someone had told me decades ago. Something I'm telling you now, whoever you are, wherever you're watching from. Kindness is not weakness. Generosity is not stupidity. And loving your children unconditionally does not mean accepting their cruelty without consequence. For most of my life, I believed that being a good mother meant sacrificing everything: my time, my money, my dreams, my comfort. I believed that a mother's love should be endless, forgiving and blind to faults. I believed that family always came first, no matter what, and I was wrong. Family isn't just about blood. It's about respect. It's about loyalty. It's about recognizing the humanity in the people who raised you and refusing to treat them like obstacles or ATMs when they reach their vulnerable years. Sarah taught me something painful, but necessary. She taught me that some people, even your own children, will see your kindness as weakness. They'll interpret your sacrifices as obligations. They'll convince themselves that they're entitled to everything you've worked for, simply because they exist. And when people show you who they really are, you have to believe them. I gave Sarah 45 years of unconditional love. I worked myself to exhaustion so she could have opportunities I never had. I wore the same coat for 15 years so she could have her dream wedding. I never asked for gratitude. I only asked for respect. But respect, I learned, is sometimes too much to ask. The saddest part isn't that she tried to steal from me. It's that she was willing to destroy me to do it. She was prepared to have me declared incompetent, to strip away my independence, to warehouse me in a facility where I'd be forgotten and helpless. She was ready to erase my autonomy just to access my bank account. That's not desperation, that's cruelty. But here's what I want you to understand. This story isn't just about me. It's happening right now in homes across this country. Elderly parents being manipulated by their children, seniors being isolated, controlled, and financially abused by the very people who should be protecting them. If you're older and you're watching this, protect yourself. Update your will. Document your mental competency. Install cameras. Trust your instincts. And understand that it's not cruel to set boundaries with your children. It's necessary. If you're younger and you're watching this, ask yourself an honest question. Do you see your parents as people? Or do you see them as a future inheritance? Do you respect them? Or are you just waiting for them to become too weak to resist your plans? Greed destroys families faster than anything else. It turns siblings into enemies and children into thieves. It replaces love with calculation and memories with resentment. Don't let it happen to you. I still think about Sarah sometimes. I wonder if she ever truly understood what she destroyed. I wonder if she lies awake at night regretting her choices. I wonder if she tells herself that she was justified, that I was being unfair, that I overreacted. I'll never know, because I'll never speak to her again, and I'm at peace with that. So now I'm asking you, what would you have done in my situation? Would you have forgiven your daughter? Would you have given her another chance? Or would you have done exactly what I did? Drop your answer in the comments below. I want to hear your thoughts. And if this story touched you, moved you, or made you think differently about family, please hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to this channel for more real stories about real people facing real challenges. Remember, family is everything, but only when it's built on love and respect. Without those, It's just people sharing DNA. Thank you for listening to my story. Protect yourselves, respect your elders, and never mistake kindness for weakness. Until next time.